Hey everybody, it's Chris Bumbry here again for JoBlo.com with another video edition of The Best Movie You Never Saw. And this week, we're taking a look at Best of the Best, starring Eric Roberts, James Earl Jones, Sally Kirkland, Phillip Rhee, and Chris Penn? Now, in this, a team of American martial artists, including single father Alex Grady, played by Roberts, are chosen to represent the United States in an international tournament, pitting them against Team Korea. Complicating things is the fact that the team's most skilled fighter, Tommy, played by Phillip Rhee, secretly plans to take his revenge against Team Korea leader Dae-han, played by his real-life brother Simon Rhee, who years earlier killed his brother in a match. Now, in the late 80s, martial arts was firmly a part of the pop culture thanks to the legend of Bruce Lee, The Karate Kid, and a never-ending slew of ninja movies from Canon Films. Schools opened up in virtually every mall across North America, and guys like Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, and especially Jean-Claude Van Damme were household names, and the martial arts tournament movie was a popular video store genre, with classics of the genre including Kickboxer, Bloodsport, and to a lesser extent, movies like Blood Fist, and many, many more. Now, unlike many of these films, except perhaps the Van Damme movies, Best of the Best got a major theatrical release in North America, and with its PG-13 rating, it's clear the makers were looking for some mainstream success, something along the lines of The Karate Kid. But for whatever reason, Best of the Best just absolutely tanked theatrically, maybe due to the fact that it was coming out from a relatively new studio at the time called The Movie Group. It only grossed $1.7 million, although its home video and cable success was so massive that we even got a theatrically released sequel in 1992, and then two further direct-to-video sequels that are only very loosely related to the first two in the mid-90s. Now, everybody seemed to have a good time doing this film. Eric Roberts himself, who starred in something like 1,000 movies, has said, "This was maybe the most fun physically I've ever had making movies. It was like boys camp. I got to go to work out the body every morning, then you'd go do the goju and get ready for the moves of the day, and then you'd go do the set and shoot karate movie. It ended up being a wonderful movie about triumph, and I'm very proud of the first film, Best of the Best. It's a really good movie." First, let me acknowledge the fact that to many of you reading this, Best of the Best is not particularly obscure. Sure, it was an absolute flop theatrically, but a generation of us grew up watching it, especially those of us who probably went and took karate lessons as kids. I know that it was a movie that I watched over and over and over again growing up, but the kids today do not know Best of the Best. They simply don't. It's not really available on many of the streaming sites. It's kind of obscure because the lead actors are pretty obscure. Eric Roberts has something of a cult status, but he's not exactly someone like a Nicolas Cage or something like that. It's a cult favorite for action fans because of its constant cable play in the 90s, specifically on the channel TBS, and sure enough it was successful enough to spawn a modest franchise, yet I firmly believe that just as many readers out there have never even heard of this late 80s flick, which is a cut above many of the martial arts movies of the era. Now, it was written by Phillip Rhee, who also starred in the film, and he said it came from the heart. It's based on my story when I competed in 1980 against the Korean team, which is kind of strange because Phillip Rhee's brother actually plays the villain in this movie. So he's avenging the brother that got killed who's on camera with him? Oh, I don't know exactly. Maybe he had another brother? I'm not sure. But anyway, it's pretty dramatic. For one thing, though, Best of the Best is a lot more of a drama in the vein of something like The Karate Kid or Rocky than an all-out action flick, and I think that maybe disappointed some action fans when they were young. This isn't a Chuck Norris movie, and thank God it's not a Steven Seagal movie. It's not even really a Van Damme movie where Bloodsport and Kickboxer had him against these murderous adversaries that he had to destroy in the ring. This one, a lot of time is given to the personal lives of the athletes, with Eric Roberts, the heart and soul of the film, as injured fighter Alex Grady, who had to put his dreams on hold to raise his son as a single dad. One of the best subplots involves his son being injured in an accident and his choice to quit the team in order to be there with his kid, and you have to appreciate that the makers opted to hire a legitimate actor in Eric Roberts rather than a fighter to play the part. In his case, it pays off because he was in really good shape and he could reasonably approximate the on-screen action and actually seem like a credible fighter. That said, that decision to hire actors rather than martial artists backfires a bit when it comes to Chris Penn, who never ever convinces is literally one of the best martial artists in the country, although I guess he's fun in the part as the swaggering, somewhat racist, comic relief guy.
Hey, spare ribs! Now that's a white man's meal, Verge.
It works, and Chris Penn, I like him. I just don't know if I buy him in an action movie, or specifically a martial arts movie. What may surprise people though is the fact that Eric Roberts, despite his top billing, isn't actually the star. Rather, it's Phillip Rhee, who wasn't even on the video store cover when I was a kid. In fact, Sally Kirkland was on the video store cover, and I imagine that a lot of people hadn't really heard of her at the time, although she had been nominated for an Oscar. And James Earl Jones. I mean, they made it look like it was an Eric Roberts, James Earl Jones, Sally Kirkland action movie. Really, the two of them play supporting roles, and Phillip Rhee is the actual star, as Tommy. He gets the most brutal scrap, as well as the big arc, with it playing out in a totally refreshing way as opposed to most 80s action flicks. I also appreciate the distinctly non-xenophobic vibe. While yes, for much of the film, Team Korea is presented as this feared enemy, when it comes down to the tournament itself, they prove to be not all that different from our American heroes, and the ending is one of the best guy cry moments ever, along with that classic tearjerker Brian song.
I love Brian Piccolo. And I'd like all of you to love him too.
Well, a bit cheesy in that distinct 80s way, meaning lots of scenes of Ray riding around on his motorcycle with a power ballad playing in the background and a long montage at the beginning featuring Eric Roberts working as a welder in a body shop with a hard rockin' song playing in the background. It's still a major cut above for the genre.
Now is the hour for you to stop the world.
Roberts was at his peak in this era, having come off 3 Golden Globe nominations for King of the Gypsies, Star 80, and the amazing Runaway Train, as well as an Oscar nod for Runaway Train, although he probably should have been nominated and in fact should have won for Bob Fosse's Star 80. It's the fact that he played such a scummy character, people weren't really able to tell that, well, he was actually just acting. Also, check out Pope of Greenwich Village opposite Mickey Rourke. That's a damn good movie too. Eric Roberts puts all of his heart into this part, and while he's maybe a bit too over the top in his emoting, in that I don't think there's ever been an action star that's cried on screen as much as he does here.
It's Daddy. What? Daddy's here.
I still love him in the part, and Rhee also should have gotten a lot more roles. He's a martial artist, but you know what, he's pretty damn good as an actor. Now, some are probably going to scoff at the idea of James Earl Jones as a martial arts coach because, I mean, it looks like he couldn't possibly throw a kick. Although, to be fair, James Earl Jones in the 70s was actually a pretty badass boxer, which you could see in The Great White Hope. He was just the man as far as authority figures went in the 1980s, so even though he doesn't look necessarily like a martial artist, you accept him. And his presence on the DVD cover, in fact, probably did help this one infiltrate pop culture to some degree, because he was kind of the man in this era. The best scene in this movie, or at least the signature scene for Best of the Best, is when Eric Roberts is having a scrap with probably the second most badass bad guy in the film, and he pops his shoulder. Now, when a hero dislocates his shoulder in an action movie of this era, it's usually pretty dramatic. I mean, think of Mel Gibson as Riggs popping it back in himself. Now, Mel Gibson has some pretty strong competition in Eric Roberts here as far as it goes to popping bones back into their sockets, and I love it when he gets Phillip Rhee, or rather Tommy, to pop it back in and just keep saying over and over again, "Pop it, Tommy, pop it, pop it."
Do it! Do it! Do it!
Say "Pop it, Tommy" to any legitimate action fan of a certain age, and 100% they're gonna know what you're talking about. Now, Best of the Best can actually be a little bit tricky to find, but it's out there on DVD Blu-ray if you're looking for it, although it doesn't seem to be available digitally at all. I looked for it on Amazon Prime, on Tubi TV, on Netflix, on iTunes, on Google Play, couldn't find it anywhere. So it takes a little bit of searching for it, although it's available if you know where to look, if you know what I mean. Now, Best of the Best is a prime serving of 80s cheese with the added benefit that, in addition to hitting all the familiar beats of the genre that you'd expect, it has a heart beneath its brawny exterior, and I found it quite inspiring as a kid, and it's well worth a watch or a revisit. And also, to this day, I have never seen a man cry as much as Eric Roberts does in this movie.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
In 1989, the movie Best of the Best had a rather abbreviated run in theaters, only grossing a mere $1.7 million. The movie, nonetheless, was a major hit on home video and cable. That's why, 3 years later, a sequel, Best of the Best 2, hit theaters. For a while. While the first film has maintained a certain cult status, the sequel, and the 2 more that followed, have largely been forgotten. Until now, on this edition of The Best Movie You Never Saw.
Remember, when the buzzer sounds, there is only one rule. And you love it!
Best of the Best 2 came from the same creative team behind Best of the Best, including director Robert Radler and producer star Phillip Rhee, although intriguingly, it was co-written by a TV actor of the time named John Allen Nelson, who starred on Baywatch for a few seasons, played Paul the Wine Guy on Friends, and has shown up as a guest actor on most of the biggest shows on TV. In the 90s, he had a nice sideline going as a writer of B-action movies, but I digress.
Did you kill Travis Brickley?
Easily.
Yeah.
Best of the Best 2 picks up where the first film left off, with the US karate team being crowned the victors of their international competition by their rivals, the Koreans, who admire their valor and brotherhood in the ring. The three leads from the first film, Eric Roberts' Alex Grady, Phillip Rhee's Tommy Lee, and Chris Penn's Travis Brickley, have gone into business together, opening a karate school in Las Vegas, where Alex's son Walter is a prize student. Being a huge fan of the first film, there's something oddly touching about the fact that these three guys have joined together to raise Alex's son, especially given that Travis was such a racist asshole in the first film, but now has been wholly redeemed by the time the second film rolled around and is now kind of a peach of a guy. It shows, people can change. But alas, Chris Penn is still not really convincing as a martial artist.
One or two punches right on the chin, I believe you'd go right out.
You have a big mouth, boy.
And a big everything else.
Something the movie actually plays into when Travis gets in over his head competing in an underground cage match at a fight club called the Coliseum, which is lorded over by a brutal killer named Brackus, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger's old training partner, Ralf Moeller, who would later be cast to great effect in Ridley Scott's Gladiator. Travis is killed while poor Walter watches, sending Tommy and Alex on the warpath. So here's the thing, Best of the Best 2 is quite different from the first movie. That one was a Karate Kid, Rocky-style sports movie, while this is much more of a martial arts-driven action film in the vein of Kickboxer or Bloodsport. It shouldn't really work, but it does, largely due to the terrific acting from leads Eric Roberts and Phillip Rhee. Both men are often sneered at as DTV guys, not that there's really anything wrong with that, and they brought a lot of heart to the Best of the Best movies, making them a cut above the average action fare you might have found in a video store in the 90s.
Quick, where are the Schwarzenegger films?
Foreign films are in the back.
No, action. This guy's an action star.
Down the center, on the left.
Eric Roberts in particular is one of the most sensitive action heroes of all time, with him breaking into tears seemingly at the drop of a hat. He does so over and over in both movies, but it's oddly touching. As a former martial arts student, I remember finding it very affecting in the early sequences when Walter fails his test for his next belt, but takes it gracefully, leading to a teary-eyed speech from his dad about how he showed him what a winner really is. Yeah, it's cheesy stuff, but also kind of nice and a good message in tune with the first film.
The way you handled your disappointment, it makes me prouder than I ever imagined, Walter. You have become a man, and I'm just so happy to be your dad.
But again, the movie is much more of an action film, with Tommy and Alex trying to avenge their friend's death at the hands of Brackus and his handler, a Vegas smoothie played by none other than a real Vegas smoothie himself, Wayne Newton.
Through the rough, yes! Give me a little kiss. Thanks.
The two, with Walter, the only witness in tow, have to hightail it to the desert to stay with Tommy's Native American grandmother, with his uncle, played by Predator star Sonny Lanham, a broken-down alcoholic who conveniently is revealed as a one-time fighter who actually managed to defeat the unbeatable Brackus in the ring, leading to him training Alex and Tommy on how to appropriately fight this unkillable opponent. One thing that's notable is how Eric Roberts, despite being the bigger star, takes the backseat here in the action department to the more trained Phillip Rhee, who's abducted by Brackus' men and forced into a series of brutal fights at the Coliseum, while Alex looks for him. Roberts gets some gunplay, which seems more in his comfort zone than karate from the first film, but all the big fights go to Rhee, who's an excellent fighter, but also has vulnerability a lot of his contemporaries didn't really have. The fight between him and Brackus almost has a tragic air to it, as Tommy really doesn't want to kill, but fate makes him a killer. The sequel, Best of the Best 3, is all about the fact that Tommy leaves his friends behind and takes a trip across America to come to terms with the fact that he had to kill, although in a weird twist, he ends up fighting the KKK in a small town, in an addition to the franchise that seems more modeled on First Blood than the other films. Best of the Best 2 is different from the first film, but it still has a lot of moments that pay off for fans, such as Tommy's opponent from the first film, Dahan, played by Rhee's real-life brother Simon, helping Alex save Tommy, as he swore a blood oath at the end of the first film to replace the brother he had initially killed in the ring. It's nice to see him live up to the oath, so the brotherhood aspect of the first film wasn't just ditched. Roberts also gets a good love interest in Meg Foster, as a TV reporter who initially seems to turn on him, only to go to bat for him and Walter in the end.
Hey, he saved my life today. Let him tell you all about it. Tell her all about it.
Surprisingly, Best of the Best 2 actually did a lot better than the first film theatrically, making about 5 times as much at the box office. Although considering how low the gross was on the first film, that still only amounted to about $6 million. But again, it was a major hit on video and cable and spawned 2 more direct-to-video sequels, although sadly, they didn't have all that much in common with the first movies, and this would be Eric Roberts' last time doing a Best of the Best film. Taken together, the 2 Best of the Best movies are very solid, sporting a couple of great performances from Roberts and Rhee, and some really nifty fights. If you haven't checked them out but enjoy fight movies from that era, or a show like Cobra Kai, which to me has always felt more like the Best of the Best movies than The Karate Kid, I highly recommend checking it out. It's a lot of fun.
Think about this.